In our previous video, we talked about data types in C, and in this video, we are going to talk about variables and how to use these variables in our C program. So let's get into it. So I'm going to first write this code. So the first thing we do in our C program is to include this header file, and then we have the entry point. Okay, so this main function which returns a 0. Now what is a variable? A variable is nothing but a placeholder that stores some value. And this value I can change, I can manipulate later in the program. For example, in mathematics, if I say x equals to 2, what I am doing is that I have first declared a variable whose name I have specified as x, and then I am initializing this variable to a value of 2. So this equal to operator is going to assign is going to place this value 2 in this variable x. Similarly, in C program, we have to first declare a variable and then initialize it to some value. But in C programming, we also have to specify the type of value this variable is going to store. For example, in our case, this variable is going to store a value of 2, and we know 2 is an integer. So this variable is going to store a value of type integer, and this is specified in C by writing int before the name of the variable, which specifies this variable is going to store a value which would be of type integer. And this int is short for integer. Okay, so what this whole statement is going to do now is that it's first going to declare a variable whose name would be x and which will store a value of integer. Then it's going to initialize this variable to a value of 2. Then we have to end this statement, and this is done with the help of this semicolon, which is known as terminator. And as the name suggests, it's going to terminate this statement, just like it terminates this statement. We can also first declare this variable, and then in the next statement we can initialize this. For example, this statement is just going to declare a variable x, and in the next statement we can initialize this variable to a value of 2. So you can either write it like this or you can write it like this. It's all up to you. Both of them mean the same thing. So far we have only talked about integers. What if I want to store a fractional number, let's say 2.4? Now as you can see, this variable has been declared as integer, but I am assigning it a fractional number. So this statement is not a valid statement, but still it's going to work. So what's going to happen is that this 0.4 is going to be truncated. So what will remain is this 2, and then this 2 will be stored in this x. So this x will only store 2 instead of 2.4. So then how would I store this fractional number? Simply by defining a variable with a data type of float. So let's first delete this. Now let's define a variable of type float. Let's name it y, and now let's initialize to a fractional number, let's say 2.4. Now what this whole statement is going to do is that it's first going to declare a variable of type float, which means this variable is going to store fractional value, and then we are going to assign this variable to 2.4 to a fractional number which is 2.4. So now this statement is a valid statement. And not only can you store numbers in a variable, you can also store a character in a variable. And this can be done with the help of another data type known as char. And just as int is short for integer, char is short for character. So let's say I name this variable as z. To initialize this variable, z to some value, we write the value inside of these two single quotes. And this value can be anything. It can be a special symbol, let's say a dollar, a percent, etc. Or it can be a number, let's say 9, 0. Or it can be a letter, let's say B, V, N, etc. And then don't forget to mention the terminator. Now let's talk about variable names. Let's delete them. There are some conditions that we must follow in order to write a variable name. One of these conditions is that a variable name must start with a letter, like this, or it can start with an underscore. Other than that, is not considered a valid variable name. So it cannot start with a 4, which is a digit. It cannot start with any other character, let's say and. It cannot start with a dollar. And you can more than one character in your variable name. So for example, this is a valid variable name. Although it does not make sense, but still it is a valid variable name because the first character in this variable name is a letter. So this is also a valid variable name because the first character is the underscore. And if I say 5, this is not a valid variable name because the first character must be a letter or an underscore. And the next condition is that a variable name is case sensitive. For example, these two are considered two different variables because this is an uppercase X and this is a lowercase x. So these two variables will be considered two different variables. Now what if I want to print the value of this variable X on the screen? We saw in one of our previous videos that to display a message on screen, we use a function known as printf. Similarly, in this video, we are going to use that same function to display the value of this variable X. So first we write the name of a function, that is printf, and then we write the parentheses. And inside of these parentheses, we write the message in these quotes. Now to display the value of this variable, we first have to check what type of variable this is, and we see this is an integer. So to display this integer, I write %d. This %d is a format specifier. This tells the printf function to display an integer on the screen. After telling the printf function what type of value I want to display, in this case an integer, next we have to specify the value that we want to print. And in this case we want to print this value 2. And this value 2 is stored in a variable x. So we type the variable x. Before we run this program, we need to understand that this is considered one parameter and this is considered another parameter. So we need to separate the two. And this is done with a comma. And as we have learned, every statement ends with a terminator. So I'm going to terminate this with this semicolon. Now I can run this program. So if I run this program, you will see this 2 will be printed on the screen. So let's run this. And now as you can see, we have been able to print this 2 on the screen. Now what if before this printf function and after declaring and initializing this variable x, I type x equals to 3. So what do you think this printf function is going to print now? If you said 3, then you're right. So what is going to happen is that after declaring and initializing this variable to 2, the variable x is holding a value 2. After this statement, I am again initializing this x to a new value, which is 3. So this 2 is going to be overwritten by this 3. So the new value of x will be 3. Now if I print this, it will print 3 instead of 2. So let's print this. So let's run this. Now as you can see, it has printed 3 instead of 2. Okay, what if I want to print a fractional value? For that I can simply change this from int to float, and then I can say, let's say 2.9 for example. Let's delete this. Now what do you think the output will be? Let's run it. So as you can see, this did not print the value 2.9. Instead it printed a random number. So what went wrong? Now if I notice in printf, recall that we said %d tells the printf function that the value that we are going to print is an integer. But as you can see, I have changed this from int to a fractional number by specifying a data type of float. So we have to tell the printf function the value you are going to print is not an integer but a fractional number, and this is done by just saying %f instead of %d. Now if I run this program, you will see that it prints the right number. Now if you are wondering how to remove these extra zeros, all you have to do is to just write dot and then 1. So what this means is that after this decimal point, only allow one digit. This will truncate all the zeros. Let's see this in action. So if I run this, you will see that it exactly prints 2.9. Okay, now what if I want to display the character on the screen? To do that, let's first declare and initialize a character, and to initialize it we know that we have to write value inside of these two single quotes. So let's say I initialize it to letter R. Now to display this character, I simply have to change this to %c. Now if I run this program, you will see that it displays letter R. So in this video we saw what a variable is, how to use this variable in our C program, how to declare it, how to initialize it, and how to print this variable on the screen. Now before I end this video, I would like to give you an assignment, and you can send your assignment on my email, which will be provided in the description of this video. So your assignment is to you have to create a program that should display your age, your height in feet, and your gender. And you just have to use the first character of your gender. And all of these three data must use variables. And with that, I'm going to end this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Till then, take care.